That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, so we're going to go through, talk about some sell high running backs. Maybe we'll throw in wide receivers with this video as well. It depends how long it takes to get through these running backs. But I need to give everyone a fair warning. If you are new to the channel, just to let you know how stupid that I truly am. We had James Conner on our sell high running back list last week. So yes, we had Conner on our sell high running back list the week before that with an unsustainable touchdown rate. Chase Edmonds goes down. James Conner, the running back, won in fantasy. 40 fantasy points, just to give you all that fair warning. And of course, y'all know, before we dive into the video, we have to give away some free Fantasy Flock Network hats. We're going to be giving our first one out to Steven and our second one out to Alfonso. Every time you go down there, drop a like on a video, leave a comment, and if you are subscribed to the channel, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat for completely free. Of course, you can just go get your Fantasy Flock Network hat by deciding to support the show and join the flock on Patreon. And when you join the flock on Patreon, you also actually get an in-depth podcast breaking down your fantasy team, access to our rest of season rankings, which should be up to date and posted over there on Patreon by the time this video comes out. Our dynasty rankings, you get to get into a dynasty league with us in the offseason, and you get into our Patreon group chat. There are so many things over there on Patreon you can take advantage of. And also, make sure you go and sign up for Underdog Fantasy if y'all want to check out some player props. If you want to get into some fantasy drafts with us on the live stream, when you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy today and you make your first deposit, they actually match that dollar for dollar up to $100 on that deposit. So please make sure you use promo code FLOCK. You can find all those links in the description of the video. And that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into these running backs. And this first guy, let me say, he is not a sell high. Not going to be a sell high for us yet. Now, we had a lot of people in the premiere going, sell Nick Chubb, sell Nick Chubb, sell Nick Chubb, sell Nick Chubb, to the point where literally if you pulled up our premiere chat, I believe that was Sunday night. It was our top 10 recap. The only message that you were seeing, I should have recorded it, but it was just people spamming to sell Nick Chubb. And I'm sitting here going, no, it's not time to sell Nick Chubb. Y'all know we had Nick Chubb on our buy low running back list 2 weeks ago. And yes, I mean, I was not a fan of Nick Chubb coming into the season. While I 100% will always say that Nick Chubb is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He's running behind one of the best offensive lines. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of people think that 1 + 1 = 2 and that Nick Chubb is an elite fantasy running back. And I know that's why he got drafted in the first round coming into the season. We didn't like him there because Kareem Hunt is in town. Kareem Hunt, of course, is going to be taking some of those snaps. Kareem Hunt's going to be getting usage in the red zone, as well as Kareem Hunt is going to be getting everything in the receiving game for the Cleveland Browns. Now, what did we say? When you have no Kareem Hunt in Cleveland, you have to go all in on Nick Chubb. So I know a lot of people think that this is a great time to sell Chubb. Personally, I can't get there. Now, I understand the thought process as he is going to be going up against the New England Patriots in week 10. Should be a pretty tough matchup where I think we're probably going to have him ranked as a mid to low end running back one, even with Kareem Hunt missing this week. But the timeline on Kareem Hunt, knowing that this should be a playoff team with the Cleveland Browns, I would imagine that it makes a lot of sense if you read all the reports based on Kareem Hunt that they actually bring him back in week 14. Now, that would be 1 week after the bye week. And I mean, there's no reason for them to rush him back in week 12 if he's just going to be on bye in week 13 regardless. So if you just kind of map this out with how it may look with the value of Nick Chubb, I mean, yes, this next week may be tough, but in week 11, he's actually going to be going up against the Detroit Lions. I mean, don't be surprised. You know how we had Jonathan Taylor ranked as our running back one last week against the New York Jets with how great that matchup was. Don't be surprised if in week 11, Nick Chubb, without Kareem Hunt in this offense going up against the Detroit Lions, will be ranked as our running back one. And then all of a sudden he just rolls the Lions when you'd imagine that game is probably going to be having the Cleveland Browns favored by 12 points. And then that's when we're going to be looking to sell Nick Chubb. So yes, Nick Chubb, I know that a lot of people think, well, we bought him low. Let's go sell him high. No, you cannot be selling Nick Chubb just yet. Please just take the production over the next few weeks. Then by the time we get to about week 12, and then that's when we can maybe expect that Kareem Hunt's return is going to be around the corner. That's when we're going to sell Nick Chubb. Hold him for now, get the elite production in your starting lineup, let the value rise a little bit more, and then we can flip in a few weeks. Now let's go over to our next running back, and this is going to be someone that you're not going to get a lot for. It's kind of funny to bring him up right after Nick Chubb because they're just in a completely different tier. But Kenyan Drake, and now I will say with Kenyan Drake, we had a lot of questions coming into the live stream. I mean, going into pretty much every single live stream last week going, okay, can we start Kenyan Drake? And I was saying, no. You don't want to be doing that. There's really no reason to be starting Kenyan Drake if you have Josh Jacobs fully healthy. And Kenyan Drake comes out and he has a massive role for this Las Vegas Raiders offense. Like, if you're actually going to be looking at what he had on a point standpoint, as well as what's more important is actually going to be the usage in the receiving game, because that's pretty much where all the production came for Kenyan Drake in this offense. He comes out, I mean, he drops 16 fantasy points. He outscores Josh Jacobs this week, but with those 16 fantasy points, I mean, it was all driven through the passing game with 6 receptions, 70 receiving yards, and 8 targets, which of course, I love to see that receiving usage. But at the end of the day, there's only going to be so much running back production to go on in Las Vegas. And if we're going back to what we had with Josh Jacobs in this contest, of course, I mean, if you see that Kenyan Drake had 8 targets, all of a sudden, maybe that makes you think that, oh, is Kenyan Drake just playing on every single third down? Is Kenyan Drake just that primary receiving running back? I mean, at the end of the day, Josh Jacobs did have 4 receptions. So it's not like Kenyan Drake's going to be getting everything here. That production is going to be going down from Kenyan Drake. And we just have to realistically ask ourselves, okay, is this a running back that we can ever play when Josh Jacobs is active? And the answer to that question is no. I mean, he had 4 carries this past week, and going forward, you're not expecting that this Raiders offense is going to be that exciting. This is something that we talked about whenever we were discussing the Henry Ruggs injury, and that the loss of Henry Ruggs in this offense wasn't going to add anything else to anybody in this team, knowing that they were going to lose that vertical element that they had, and it was going to make it a lot harder for Derek Carr to effectively move the ball down the field, get trips to the red zone. So with Kenyan Drake, this is pretty much back-to-back performances now where he has looked very good. I mean, he's had, I guess, 3 weeks in a row with damn near 20 fantasy points. Going back to week 6 against the Denver Broncos, he comes out, 4 rush attempts. He has 34 rushing yards, the rushing touchdown, 2 receptions, 39 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. So he drops 21 points in that contest. Against the Eagles, I know this looks great. I mean, against the Eagles, you actually have him going out 14 carries, 3 receptions. He gets the rushing touchdown as well. But a big thing is, if you're looking at that Eagles stat line, remember, that was a game that Josh Jacobs didn't play fully. That was a game that Josh Jacobs left early with that chest injury. So I think we can just take that, throw it out the window here, and we're really only looking at week 6 and week 9 of that top end production for Kenyan Drake. And in those 2 weeks, he combined for 8 carries and 8 receptions. So I know it's a little deceiving if you're just looking at the fantasy production from Kenyan Drake, but going forward, I don't think this is a running back you can start with confidence. I think this is a running back that's in a very similar mode to someone like Tony Pollard, Alexander Mattison, and that, yes, if Josh Jacobs goes down, all of a sudden you lock in Kenyan Drake. You don't even think about it. He's essentially a better version of Devonta Booker. Now, if we're going to be viewing Kenyan Drake in that light, answer me this. Who would you rather have if the starting running back goes down for all these offenses? Would you rather have Kenyan Drake with no Josh Jacobs? Would you rather have Tony Pollard with no Ezekiel Elliott? Or would you rather have Alexander Mattison with no Dalvin Cook? And I think the answer is probably to go with those other handcuff running backs. So I know Kenyan Drake may have a little bit of a higher week-to-week floor, and maybe that's something that you need if you just got the injury to Zach Moss, you have the injury to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have the injury to Kareem Hunt, you have the injury to Derrick Henry. I mean, of course, there are so many injuries across the NFL that maybe you can use someone like Kenyan Drake just for the fact that he is going to be running a decent amount of routes out of the backfield. But if it's not that case and he's your running back 4 or 5 on the team, you're never going to be starting him, and he's just the premium handcuff running back. If something was to happen to Josh Jacobs, give me Alexander Mattison instead, because I think Alexander Mattison with no Dalvin Cook is a locked and loaded top 5 running back. Kenyan Drake would probably be a high-end running back too. Now let's go over to a player that every single week we have him on our sell high list, and every single week he comes out and he produces. Let's go over to Melvin Gordon. And with Melvin Gordon, yes, he scores more points than Javonte Williams this week. He comes out 17.5 points in week 9 after we said to sell him after week 8. In week 8, he dropped 21 fantasy points. So essentially, Melvin Gordon averaging 20 fantasy points over the past 2 weeks. Now, if we're going to be comparing these stat lines, of course, you can look at the stat lines. You can look at how the actual running backs look on the football field. And everybody, including my grandmother, will tell you that Javonte Williams looks like the more explosive running back. Javonte Williams looks like the more talented running back. We've discussed this in pretty much, I think, 3 buy low running back videos in a row, how we're expecting Javonte Williams to continue to expand his role in Denver to the end of the season, where he's like the 2019 version of Miles Sanders and the 2020 version of what you had in Jonathan Taylor. And now if we're going to be comparing these two running backs, I know it's not necessarily fair for me to just be looking at box scores here, because of course it would be a lot better if we can all just sit here and look at the field together. But in reality, if you're just watching the football game, trying to make your fantasy decisions on that, you're essentially just watching TV and not doing anybody any service. Now, if we're going to be looking at what you had with Javonte Williams this week, 111 rushing yards off of 17 carries. I mean, right now, Javonte Williams has had about 20 carries less than Melvin Gordon, and they are almost identical with the rushing yards that they have had so far this season. To go along with this, with Melvin Gordon back in week 1, we know Melvin Gordon's stat line of 11 carries and 101 rushing yards is completely skewed based on the 170-plus yard touchdown that he had. If you were to remove that one touchdown, Javonte Williams would essentially be averaging maybe a full yards per carry higher than what you have with Melvin Gordon. So that knowledge, knowing the fact that Javonte Williams turned 21 in April. This is an incredibly young, explosive running back that looks fantastic. It's going to continue to increase his role. I think we should look to sell Melvin Gordon, because with Melvin Gordon here, I mean, this is a running back that I think he probably has the starting running back job one more week in Denver against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 10. But then you have the bye week in week 11. And I'd be very surprised if Melvin Gordon is still going to be atop of Javonte Williams in touches coming out of the bye week. And even if we're just talking about what you had at the beginning of the game here, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they were damn near 50-50 split. I mean, with Javonte Williams, this was running back leading in rushing at the beginning, and then Melvin Gordon, and the garbage time just comes out and racks up a ton at the end. So it's pretty annoying. I know that I'm looking at PFF's article right here with the snap counts, and they're saying trade for Melvin Gordon. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying the opposite. Melvin Gordon, I give him one more week, and then after the bye week, I think it's Javonte's job. Now let's go over to a running back that I know if you're going to be looking at the snap data, it is definitely a little bit skewed. And I knew that we were going to have a lot of people pushing back on us with that top 10 lessons learned video when we discussed this lesson learned. And I think that, honestly, Damien Harris owners, they get a break here. Because Damien Harris, while yes, he only plays 24 out of 62 snaps on Sunday, he did get that head injury. And that's going to make it where a lot of Damien Harris owners aren't going to really pay attention to what happened in this game. And they're going to go, oh, okay, I mean, Damien Harris, he got there with the stat line. He got injured halfway through the game. That's why Ramondre Stevenson got so many touches. No, that's not what happened at all. Damien Harris got hurt at the very end of this game. I believe there were about 6 minutes left in the game. If you don't know, a football game lasts 60 minutes. So 90% of the game was essentially played here when Damien Harris went down with that head injury. And he played less than 50% of the snaps. He played about 30% of the snaps in New England this week. Not only did he play about 30% of the snaps, but Ramondre Stevenson, someone that, yes, I will admit, we don't know if he's going to be active going forward. We don't know if he'll be a healthy scratch. We don't know if he'll just be out with his own head injury. Both of these running backs are currently dealing with what I believe to be a concussion. I'm recording this way too early to confirm that, so it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. But nonetheless, we don't know what Stevenson's going to give us down the stretch. But what we said coming into the season was that Damien Harris would have that role at the beginning of the year, because you're not expecting a day 3 running back like Ramondre Stevenson to come out and all of a sudden just handle the starting job for New England. No, that was never the expectation. What the expectation was with Damien Harris, and why you were trying to avoid, is that in the second half of the year, that's when the day 3 running back Ramondre Stevenson begins to slowly increase his role to the point where you can no longer start Damien Harris. And best case scenario here with Damien Harris, this is a running back that's getting utilization on first and second down, and that's it. And I know he gets there with the rushing touchdown this past week yet again, and just makes me tilt beyond belief, because you had Ramondre Stevenson marching this team down. Stevenson was the only man moving the football down the field an entire drive. And then once they get down to the 30-yard line, they go, okay, Stevenson, you need a breather. Stevenson just ripped off like a 60-yard reception, not 60-yard reception, a long reception. He comes off the field. Damien Harris goes in. Damien Harris scores that rushing touchdown. Harris this week, 15 carries, 30 rushing yards, the rushing touchdown to go along with it. Damien Harris over the past 5 weeks now, yes, has 6 touchdowns, which, I mean, it makes his fantasy production look okay. It makes Damien Harris look like he is the running back 24 on a points per game basis. So best case scenario here with Damien Harris, you're getting a low end running back 2, high end running back 3. And this is a running back that I'm expecting that his role is probably going to decrease as the season goes on. Currently, I mean, dealing with an injury, and we're always going to do this. Now, I know that when these players come out and they continue to score touchdowns, it is very frustrating, but nonetheless, we can look at the workload that Harris has if he does not get into the end zone. And what was the fantasy production this week if he does not fall into the end zone? 4 fantasy points. A whopping 4. Like, he is 100% touchdown dependent. I'm not going to be betting on a running back like that. I would much prefer, like, if we're going to go through and look at some other running backs in a similar range of what you would have with his rest of season value, like, I would prefer Josh Jacobs over Damien Harris. It's not even going to be close. I mean, with Jacobs, yes, he hasn't been falling to the end zone as often. He's only had 3 touchdowns over the past 5 games. But still, with Jacobs, we historically have a very high touchdown rate. He himself, I mean, is giving us a 13-point floor when he's not scoring the ball. So I think if you could sell Damien Harris for a running back in the tier of Josh Jacobs, that would make so much sense here. Now let's go over to a running back that you know. We're going to include him on the video. Now, I was going to go through and talk about James Conner as the last running back on this list, but I just pulled up the injury report with Chase Edmonds, and dear God, literally 3 minutes ago, it was reported that Chase Edmonds has the dreaded high ankle sprain. So you know what? We can talk about James Conner here. I know that technically it's a sell high video. I know we had 2 running backs here that I'm not telling you to sell high in Nick Chubb and James Conner, but I owe you an explanation with James Conner on what we can expect going forward with no Chase Edmonds in this offense. Not telling you to sell high on James Conner as I have done time and time again when Chase Edmonds was healthy in Arizona. Now we have to have some realistic expectations on what we may be able to see from this backfield in Arizona between Chase Edmonds and James Conner. Let's pull up Conner's stat line this past week just so everybody can kind of see where we're at. 21 carries, 96 rushing yards, 5 receptions, 77 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown to go along with it. 40 fantasy points. Now, y'all know with James Conner, this was a running back that we were trying to sell high based on the unsustainable touchdown rate, based on the fact that he had no utilization in the receiving game. He had more touchdowns than receptions coming into this past week, and he walks away with 5 receptions, doubling the amount that he had on the entire season. And it's clear to see why, and that Chase Edmonds is a running back that was removed from this game. And with Chase Edmonds, this is a running back that was able to average about 5 targets a game coming into this past week. So it makes a lot of sense that if Edmonds is averaging 5 targets a game, all of a sudden they're not drastically changing how they're running this offense based on the running back that's in that backfield. James Conner, we've seen him before in Pittsburgh come out, and he is able to get targets out of the backfield. So now it's just a completely different scenario. Like if you're going to go through, if you're going to be looking at, say, the combined Chase Edmonds and James Conner production so far this season, let's do some of this math off the top of the head. Let's do it in the live stream right now. Week 1, you'd have had 20 fantasy points. In week 2, you'd have had 15 fantasy points. In week 3, you'd have had over 30. In week 4, you would have had over 30. In week 5, you'd had about 20 fantasy points. In week 6, you would have had about 16 fantasy points. In week 7, you'd have had over 20. In week 8, you would have had over 30. And in week 9, obviously, Chase Edmonds drops 40 fantasy points. Now, I will say, Eno Benjamin is going to have a small role in this offense. You're not going to see the James Conner show where he's getting 20 carries and 5 receptions a game going forward. That should not be the expectation here with James Conner. But with Eno Benjamin, this has been a very disappointing running back since coming out of the Arizona State in that 2020 draft class. I mean, if you don't know, if you were ever playing Devy fantasy football, which is like dynasty fantasy football on steroids, I mean, a player like Eno Benjamin, a lot of people in fantasy football back when he was in college loved Eno Benjamin, just as a quick side note, but he is not going to be seeing that same workload that you had from Chase Edmonds. I mean, Eno Benjamin is a fine pass catching running back out of the backfield, but he's not going to be just a specialist like you have with another running back in Chase Edmonds. If we're pulling up Eno Benjamin, I mean, this is someone that I would expect. I mean, he is 5'9", 207 pounds. To maybe take half of that Chase Edmonds workload. But even if he only takes half of that Chase Edmonds workload and the other half of the workload then splits over to James Conner, and instead of this being a backfield that Chase Edmonds is getting 65% of the snaps and James Conner is getting 35%, I mean, just say that James Conner is able to be the running back that's getting 65% of the snaps and he has every single touch at the goal line. James Conner, like we said all season now, if Chase Edmonds goes down, I think he's a top 12 running back. I think he is that low-end running back one. Will be interesting to see where we rank him in our top 24 running back rankings, which should come out tomorrow or maybe the next day. So whatever, make sure you're subscribed for that. And of course, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, leave a comment letting me know how stupid I am. And I think that should be it. I hope to see y'all in the live stream tonight. And oh yeah, of course, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, they matched you dollar for dollar on your first deposit. You can get into some drafts with us. You can go check out some really cool player props available in damn near every single state. And of course, that's going to be the best way to support the channel. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you. Thank you again and have a great day.